Hey, what's up, OCs? Welcome to episode 77 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want and we try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. This one in particular was a highly requested game, so I'm really excited to be able to finally give it to you. I gotta say real quick, this camera was brought to you by Codename Gamma, and if you want this camera for yourself, there is a link to his how-to video in the video description down below. But enough jibber jabber, let's get going. So a word of warning, this camera was incredibly difficult to use. I was able to get a lot of really great shots, but it doesn't work in every single area, and in the areas that it does work, my god is it difficult to control. But something as minute as that doesn't deter me. The fact that matters most is that it does work. But I am giving you this disclaimer why you're not going to be able to see everything the game has to offer. So as you can see right now, we're doing a zoom out of Green Hill Zone on the classic stage, and let's see what else Green Hill Zone has to hide. Next up is the item boxes, and you might have noticed in your normal playthrough that these objects inside of the boxes look a little bit 3D. Well, whether or not you were thinking about it or not, here's a good perspective on how it actually looks from another angle, which confirms that it is 100% 3D, including items like the 1-Up box. It uses a technique very similar to how it works with Mr. Game & Watch in Super Smash Bros. Melee and Onward, where the model is in fact 3D, but it's squished really tight. This is evidenced by the fact that if you take the camera behind the Sonic head, you can see that there's still some smushed 3D geometry on the other side. Here we got the choppers, a Sonic staple from the very first game. And from another angle, you can see how they actually operate. See, instead of going up and down, they're actually on a looping track. And you might notice that at any given time, they seem to always be visible. This is because they have layer priority over anything else in the game. Aside from the HUD itself, of course. Meaning even if it's technically below the bridge, it'll still show up because it's programmed to always be in the front. That is, of course, unless it actually moves into the background, at which point the layer priority is changed. And instead of a zoom out, here's an alternate perspective of classic Sonic running through the stage. Hey, so how about that hub world? Even if you're modern Sonic, you can't manipulate the camera in any sort of way, so this is a little bit of a tree here. Moving the camera around proves that there isn't just a walk mesh for Sonic to stand on. That white ground you're running on is technically a texture, which is evidenced by the fact that you can see shadows bouncing off of the environment when you move in a different way, which is great because we can actually see just how high up the wall goes in the backdrop before it just stops and you're just looking at the void behind it. Also, there's some really fun stuff to look at inside the hub world. Like, for example, the killer whale over here seems to jump in and out of the water in the background, but if we take the camera below the water surface, you can see that old Willy over here just stops animating once he's underneath the ground, but he stays there for all of us to see his frozen character model. Also, we can get a much better look at the pinball machine that's in the hub area and see how much it really stacks against the actual pinball machine that you end up going into when you select it. And you got me, this is definitely a segue to the pinball machine area. Zooming out the camera for the pinball area is really surprising. I know that there's a backdrop that you're supposed to be able to kind of see, but to what length they actually went to and how little of it you end up seeing in the final game is shocking. There's all sorts of fun buildings and signs that you couldn't see otherwise. And that's of course a great thing to find in a show like this, but also just the little things are kind of special too, like just seeing the pinball machine from a different angle. Again, a very restricted camera that points in very certain directions. This next segment is a viewer request from Twitter, which was asked by a fellow YouTuber, NitroRad. And what he's always wondered is when you're going down the big railing down the clock tower in Rooftop Run, you see like a bazillion houses all at once. And the question is, how do they end up rendering all of those houses? Well, of course, most of these houses have a low polygon count, despite the fact that they have pretty decent textures on them. But it doesn't take long before these houses go from polygon models and instead become completely flat textures representing houses. Though I feel like this would be completely completely unnecessary if they just did one thing, and that is take out this whole other layer of houses that you're not allowed to see, because just for the fun of it, there is a whole other area where there's a whole bunch of low poly houses, completely outside of the player's view. And of course, we gotta do a zoom out of the area itself so that you can see just how stupidly huge the rooftop run clock tower is. It's absurdly big compared to the other buildings. Alright, so let's talk about our first boss, the Death Egg. And inside the hangar of the Death Egg, it's really surprising how much is going on in the background that you will not be able to see whatsoever. There's some space trains that are flying around in the backdrop, but it's hard to tell that they're actually coming out of the station itself. And even better than that is if we take the camera outside of the hangar, you can see the entire planet as well as a whole lot of flying trains riding around off camera. Now, this discovery was something I found completely by accident. I accidentally stumbled upon it while filming an intro. But if we take the camera inside of classic Sonic's face, you can see that it looks like he has a pair of big lips inside of his head. Well, don't worry, it's nothing that shocking. What's stored inside of Sonic's head at any given time for some reason is his eyelids. This will become more apparent very soon, and I'll show you why. But before we move on to that explanation, I just want to show you that he also has his mouth awkwardly stored to the left of his head. Because it's no surprise to anyone that Sonic's mouth is not in the front of his face, but just seeing it in 3D and knowing that the inside of his mouth is skewed off to a different direction than the front of his face makes this anomaly even more odd. But anyways, the reason why I was able to figure out that these were his eyelids is because if we go over to modern Sonic, you can see that he has blue eyelids in the back of his head. Once I saw that, I was able to piece it together and realize, oh, that's right, classic Sonic has skin-colored eyelids. Let's take a look at Seaside Hill. Now, with modern Sonic, pretty much in every single stage that he does, he gets a running start and you're not allowed to see what's behind him after the player's in control of Sonic. And in Seaside Hill, they give you a little bit of the environment behind Sonic to see before the level starts up. But taking the camera over there can show you that there's quite a bit of environment that they don't allow you to see whatsoever. Like, for example, some of this grass and trees are never seen by the player. And funny enough, the bridge that drops at the start behaves the exact same way as it did in the Sonic Heroes episode, where it just sits there underneath the water. Now, for Seaside Hill in general, we got two zoom outs to do here. One at the start of the level so you can see how it looks here versus how it looked in the Sonic Heroes episode that I did, as well as a zoom out for the end of the stage, because these buildings are pretty massive despite the scope that the game allows you to see. City Escape is a lot of fun to look at in the same way that Rooftop Run is. If we zoom the camera out, we can see that the city buildings have a consecutive pattern of squares. And wow, how many buildings there are, I couldn't even tell you. There are so many here. They may have actually outdone Rooftop Run. So no, there is no shocking revelation here with Perfect Chaos. It's just that we can take the camera wherever we want in this scene, thankfully. And yeah, I just want to show you an amazing zoom out of a pretty well-made boss. One more scene behind Sonic when he starts a level that I wanted to show you guys is in Crisis City. In some of the cases of these stages, there seems to be some evidence that you were allowed to see the back end of the stage at some point. Because here in Crisis City, when we turn the camera around to the barricaded areas, you can see two toppled buildings that are very unique to themselves. A piece of environment that's never seen by the player. Hey, thank you very much for watching, and thank you Codename Gamma for doing this camera. It's actually kind of fun to say. Like I said, I got links to his video down below, and if you're looking for more Sonic content, dude, I got you covered. For no real reason, I've covered a ton of Sonic games at this point, so I got links to Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, Sonic Mania. I'm gonna have a couple of links to those videos on the screen here, but of course you can always go in the video description down below and find them there as well. I'll have links to all of them. Make sure to stay tuned in the future for a Sonic Forces episode, as well as a classic Sonic episode. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next week. Take care.